Something was wrong with Thomas the Tank Engine. Normally, he was one of the most cheerful engines, always waking up bright and early, with a smile on his face and a positive outlook for the day ahead. But this morning, that had changed. From the moment he rolled out of his berth, Thomas wore a fierce scowl on his face and was very rude. "Hurry up," he snapped to his crew. "I'm tired of having to wait for Gordon to be ready and pop out so that the rest of us can finally get going. I want to be the first out today, ready to leave before Gordon even reaches the station." "You couldn't even leave before me even if you were ready early," huffed Gordon haughtily. "You know how the schedule's set up. The express is always the first train of the day to leave, and it's followed by the other main line and branch line trains. That's the way it's been for years, and your sudden wanting to show off won't change it." "Pah!" retorted Thomas. "The way I see it, the only real reason I'm kept waiting is because it takes your crew so long to move the only thing on this island that's larger than your ego." He paused and suddenly thundered, "Your size!" Gordon gaped speechlessly at the tank engine, and the other engines did the same. They had rarely heard Thomas use such unkind words in the many years that they had known him. When his crew was at last finished with the preparations, Thomas huffed off in a cloud of steam, leaving the other engines behind. They muttered with worry to each other, hoping that this would just pass. But I'm sorry to say, it didn't. A little while later, Thomas bustled angrily into the station with Annie and Clarabelle. Sir Topham Hatt had just arrived himself. He was headed towards his office, and was most surprised to see Thomas pulling in at the platform. He walked over to see what was going on. "Good morning, Thomas," said the Hat Controller. "You're here bright and early today." "A bit too early. Most of the passengers haven't even started travelling here yet. What's the big hurry today?" "Nothing of real importance, sir," replied Thomas. The little engine still had a bad temper, but he made his tone sound calm, as he knew backsassing the Fat Controller could lead to rather unpleasant results. "I just wanted to be the first engine out today, because I'm tired of having to wait for Gordon and the other engines to fuss about with their trains before I can finally leave." "Well, you've certainly managed to achieve getting here early," said the Fat Controller, "but you did come a bit too early to do anything but sit here. Why don't you fetch the coaches for the other engines, so they'll be ready to leave sooner too?" "But sir, I came here this early just so I could be the first one out, not help the rest of them," huffed Thomas. "They're perfectly capable of fetching their own coaches, so they should have to do it, not me." The Fat Controller glared sternly at Thomas. "Well, if you really want to be the first one out, a daily heavy goods train is always needed to go out early to avoid causing delays later in the day for the mainline engines. As I said, the passengers won't be arriving for a good time, so I can't let you sit here wasting perfectly good time and steam." Thomas considered his next decision carefully. If he gave the Fat Controller any more resistance, he could find himself in a great deal of trouble. And he did have a valid point. Passengers wouldn't be arriving for at least another 2 hours, and it would be rather lonely and boring just to sit at the platform during that time. So with a grunt of impatience, Thomas uncoupled from Annie, and with a furious puff of steam, he puffed away to the yards to arrange the coaches. Now, shunting coaches was Thomas's first job when he had come to the island of Sodor. Only after he had saved James from a serious accident with some trucks did he earn his own branch line. Even though Thomas still did shunting jobs here and there over the years, he was a bit out of touch with the way it worked with the morning train's coaches. They were arranged in a specific way, so that the engines taking the first trains of the day would be the first ones to collect their coaches, like Gordon with the express and Henry with the mainline local. Thomas was too impatient to even bother remembering this order, and his crew wasn't helping him either. They weren't happy with the way Thomas had snapped at them, and so they were becoming just as careless. Thomas was rough with the coaches, banging them into one another fiercely and moving them into improper sidings. He didn't care what he did now. He did intend to follow the Fat Controller's orders, but he was going to carry them out his own way. About an hour later, the shunter arrived to find the yard in a dreadful mess. The coaches were out of place, trucks were everywhere, and Thomas was still fuming, without any real destination. After making the tank engine come to a stop, he informed Thomas and his crew about the way the coaches needed to be arranged, and went off to attend to his own duties. By the time Thomas had finally rearranged the coaches, and brought most of them to the platform, the other engines were already there. James and Edward sat at platforms 3 and 4, Henry at platform 5, and Gordon at 1, waiting for Thomas to bring in the express coaches. The passengers were beginning to arrive, and they were piling into the coaches. The engines decided to talk about Thomas's behaviour while he was out of earshot for the time being. "It's good to see that Thomas has come down a bit," said James. "The way he was acting at the sheds had me worried. Looks like it passed though." "And it was quite generous of him to fetch our coaches for us," put in Edward. "Maybe that outburst this morning was just a little bout of over-eagerness. It happens to the best of us at times." But Gordon wasn't so quick to forgive. "Ha! If you ask me, the only reason he's trying to be nice now is because he wants us to forget about that outburst of his. What nerve he has to insult me. Me, of all engines." "Oh, do stop whining," snorted Henry. "You know, Thomas isn't the only engine who's tired of your constant boasting. We put up with you a great deal more than you care to believe, Gordon." At this, Gordon fell silent. He sensed that Henry was telling the truth and made a note to himself to make it a serious attempt to be less boastful. Just then he heard Thomas's whistle as the little engine approached the station with the express coaches. Gordon whistled loudly and then called to Thomas, "Hurry up, you! We're nearly late as it is, and I won't have my day muddled by your dawdling." At this, Thomas's patience gave out. In seconds, he made a plan to shove the coaches into Gordon, giving him a good bump. He made up his mind, and with that, Thomas suddenly surged forward, bumping the coaches fiercely. He charged into the station, but he had found with horror that he had knocked his driver and fireman off the footplate, so he couldn't stop. He rolled straight into the station, frantically trying to stop himself. He tried to whistle a warning to Gordon, but it was no good. As Gordon's crew, the guard, and the passengers had been on the platform at the time, no one was hurt, apart from cases of shock. The coaches and 2 engines were a different issue. The ferocity of the impact had resulted in the front coach smashing into Gordon's tender, making him surge forward and come off the rails. The first coach had crumpled like an accordion between the second coach and Gordon's tender, and it lay in smithereens. The second coach's front was also badly damaged, but there was still more to come. When Thomas opened his eyes, he found himself in the smashed-up remains of the cargo hold of the brake coach. As he was unable to stop himself, his wheels had kept turning after the crash, straight into the back of the brake coach. His wheels were still moving, but feebly because debris had gotten in his pistons and wheels. A little while later, Percy arrived with the breakdown crane. Workmen cleared away a good amount of rubble and debris. Thomas was still stuck in the back of the coach when Sir Topham Hatt came to see him. He was not happy, to say the least. "Well, Thomas," said the Fat Controller, "I hope you're happy with what you've done. You've caused hundreds of pounds in damage, and until we can get this mess cleared up, the express can't run. Not only that, but you've badly damaged Gordon, the track, and yourself. Both of you will have to go to the works to be injured. Doc will have to run your branch line again, and Henry shall have to pull the express. And be assured, once you return, I shall have more for you to do to make up for this disaster. You'll be doing heavy goods work for weeks to come. Thomas quivered in fear and sadness. Yes, sir, he murmured. And with that, the Flat Controller stepped out of the coach and headed back to his office. When Thomas was finally pulled clear of the wreckage and loaded onto a truck, Edward coupled up to him. "Come along, then," he puffed crossly, and the old engine pulled Thomas to the works.